started to just brainstorm all of these ideas for what a trading card game would look like that I wanted to play.
Everything has led to this.
You could just feel the energy. Crowning a world champion is a big deal.
Ever since I stepped into the local scene, I had a dream of one day playing in the World Championship. There is some amount of pressure.
Competitive play is a really key part of what Flesh and Blood is. You know, it's a culture, it's a community, it's friendships, it's adventure. The World Championship is like the pinnacle of all of that. As humans, we generally have a workplace, home, and then a third place. For gamers, there's oftentimes their local game store. It's their third place they can just escape to and meet their friends, hang out, have a good time, make new friends. The game is the commonality that brings people together at a certain location and date and time.
When you go into your local game store, you're suddenly going into a local community, into a socializing environment where you can have fun, relax, and most importantly, meet people with similar interests. Where else are you going to meet anybody these days? At work?
I just kind of wanted to check out the game. I hadn't really met anyone else who played it. Once I stepped into the local scene, I started to kind of get a taste of how friendly and welcoming the community is.
We have some players who make worlds qualifications, make nationals qualifications. They practice together. People are really competitive, but we also know how to have a good time.
That paired with the desire to try to compete and see how I stack up at larger events drove me to start practicing a lot. And that was my first real step into competitive Flesh and Blood.
The store is where your journey to the stage starts. I was playing TCGs since I was like 13. I mean, some of my fondest memories from my younger years were piling into a car with a bunch of TCG buddies, or even people I didn't know. It's just like, let's go to this place and play some cards for the week. I could see the direction that the industry was heading, and the major publishers were aggressively trying to migrate the fans out of the stores and onto their digital platforms. This concept of play the game, see the world was starting to fade and diminish, and I just really didn't like that. I wanted to do something to try and preserve that culture, actually going back to deliver to the fans that core essence of what TCGs were about. Play the game, see the world. Most people thought I was crazy. The TCG industry has a just immense failure rate. There's been some like 450 TCGs that have been released in a dozen that are still getting published. So there's always a lot of apprehension to trying a new game because most of them just die. I wanted to create a game where you come to the fight at your strongest, at your peak, throwing your biggest haymakers at the start of the game. You arrive at your strongest. You're actually trying to finish the game with the dregs, with the weaker cards. And as the fight wears on, you start wearing down.
Don't look. It's a surprise what we play, eh?
As a designer, you got to be really brutally honest with yourself. Every single day, playing, iterating, grinding it out, learning stuff, bidding things off, and no matter how much time you put into something and how great you think it is or thought it was, if it's just not hitting those notes or the tone or the player experience, you just need to mark it off and go back to the drawing board. I really wanted Flesh and Blood to be about more of like human versus human in the first instance.
We are at the table together to have this shared experience, a shared agreement on how the game is going to go. What we think are the best and worst strategies, the best and worst cards to come out in the new set, what our own history with the game is, how we started it, and what we want to be doing in the future with it. Trading card games are what bring us together, and that is that value of it not being an online experience, of it being an in-person, in the flesh and blood experience at your local game store.
Now, as you might see over my shoulder, there's a ton of people here and a ton of stuff going on. So we got the Legend Story Studios stage right here to my left. I grew up late 80s, early 90s, and I played TCGs a ton, you know, with my brother, my friends, and we would collect cards. That was the coolest part, right? Like, I'd have a card that you didn't have. We get really excited about cracking packs. Went away from that for a while in the industry. It was way more profitable to be doing digital.
I was searching for something, you know, to pour my time, my passion, and have make some memories.
I really missed the camaraderie. I really missed the community of playing card games, and I felt like that there was a good chance that at least within New Zealand that was about to come back with this game.
We're a brand new publisher from the bottom of the world that nobody had ever heard of. Enough people across the US in particular purchased our first play-at-home welcome kit.
Foil timestamp. It's actually really sick.
Those people really loved the game. They liked the game, and they started telling their friends that it's a really good game and you should play this game at home in lockdown.
Flesh and blood, flesh and blood, flesh and blood.
Flesh and Blood.
And then more and more people did. Once people could go down to the local store and start playing, and we just had a big groundswell of people just engaged with the game and loving it and telling their friends and getting more people to play it.
It's a new trading card game, Flesh and Blood. It's selling out around the world.
Like, our biggest challenge is we can't keep it in stock. We became the #1 best-selling TCG in North America. That was the point where the rubber hit the road and we got all of that momentum, and it's like, yeah, Flesh and Blood is an incredible game.
When I tried out Flesh and Blood, I just fell in love with the design of it, the way that the games play out.
From the first game I played, I had an inkling that it was something like different or something like particularly special just from the gameplay itself.
These little bit nuances of how you pitch, how you block. And you really have to know how your decks and how your opponent decks work.
I love the push and pull and the back and forth of the games and how it felt like all the games are really close.
I remember when I picked up my first couple of Blitz decks, the cashier at my local game store couldn't stop talking about Flesh and Blood, talked my ear off. Apparently, there were already weekly events being held, a new set coming out.
I've got 1,000 packs ready to be opened.
So we'll talk about it.
Let's see what he got. Oh, this is my first Fabled ever. That is so cool.
It started to propagate throughout the TCG communities. People started playing with the cards and started talking about it.
Today, we're going to be talking about the 4 reasons why you should get into Flesh and Blood, the card game, right now, this very moment.
It's just a critical part of the TCG ecosystem is having those really passionate, engaged fans to talk about the game, what they love about the game, what they don't like about the game, what they're excited about. Just getting all of these opinions and passions and interests just like percolating throughout the community. That's a really key thing that kind of predicated the success of Monarch, was we had that ecosystem, that foundation of content creators talking about the game and in many ways acting as ambassadors for the game.
If you look at it from a business standpoint, LSS maybe doesn't make a lot of sense. Why are they not making a digital client for you to download on your phone? That's what everyone's doing. But LSS is interested in Flesh and Blood being played in Flesh and Blood. They're investing in those local game stores where we meet our friends. They see the value in community as a driving force. That, more than anything, really gets them the attention of players who are searching for that community, searching for that place to call their own. And yeah, Flesh and Blood, that is the home for that now.
Our vision, our mission, our whole premise is about creating these real-world, in-person, connections, like bringing some humanity back to the experience.
The game store market, there's a lot of risk in it relative to the reward. It feels like a lot of games are just pumping out the same stuff and trying to force feed them the same shit every single day, and it's frustrating. You guys actually have a roadmap, you have an organized play system, and it feels authentic. You actually listen to the market, you watch the market. If I go to my distributor and say, hey, I want to buy millions of dollars of Flesh and Blood, Flesh and Blood's gonna tell you, no, you can't buy that. Because you guys don't want that to happen because it devalues the game. And I appreciate that. They also respect the fact that, like, as a small game store, that you need to make a margin.
That's actually, this is actually one of the cards I really want.
The Marvel. Hey, James, what's inside a cracked bobble? Answer that. Answer that.
We had 34 people show up for an event on a Thursday. They stayed till like 2 in the morning and they're still here. You can hear them in the background. They're still here.
This is a weekly occurrence, by the way.
Because they enjoy the community. They enjoy that.
Where's Josh?
Each new store I went to, I was continuously blown away by how great the community was. And at that point, I thought maybe that was just at my local scene. That energy and just vibe was consistent across Flesh and Blood players everywhere.
I am genuinely excited to be a part of this game. I've never seen a company go, no, we want to make this special. People just want other people involved. Everybody wants everyone else to succeed. I think it's the philosophy, but I think it's the Flesh and Blood.
Take a look at what we got going on here. Next, we got the Legend Story Studios stage right here to my left with the vendors right behind it. Let's go take a look at what's going on over there. Right now, James White's doing a meet and greet. When I look at the dev team, when I look at the people who are making the game, you can tell they're gamers. They're actual card game players. And so they think the way we do. And you can see that with a lot of the decisions made in the game that are player-centric and player-first. It just makes me happy to be involved in the game where the community is so good and the professionalism is so high.
For me, it's primarily a social experience. Having friends and community and people come together, I think, is really the beauty of trading card games. As soon as I picked it up, it felt fantastic. There was so much depth, so many meaningful decisions.
You express yourself through those decisions. In a way, that deck, when I sit down to play against someone, a friend or a stranger, is me introducing myself.
Competitive play is the heart of what Flesh and Blood was originally created for. Playing in your weekly armory events and working up that aspirational pathway for the people who really, really want to chase that competitive kick to eventually get to the big stage. The World Championship is like the pinnacle of all of that.
I'll pitch this. Play a driving blade, swing the saber for 3. I'm in danger.
I don't think you just wake up and you are really good at a game. It's more about a mindset of being willing to improve and focus on the process. You need to take a lot of losses and understand what are you learning from those losses.
Had some losses early and it really affected my mental game. And ever since then, I've kind of been on this journey to really just focus on the game itself. Like me sitting down with my opponent and there is no event around me.
Our team is unique in that we're kind of multinational. At one point we had a member living in the States, a member living in Canada, a member living in Australia, and a member living in New Zealand. And we kind of come together and collaborate when we can. Just 7 awesome days with friends getting ready for the biggest tournament in the world.
If you're really smart at card games and you're really good at strategy, you're winning a lot, you are respected and you are sort of held up a little bit more.
people I consider family are very close friends, but they feel like family. Without this game, I wouldn't have met any of those people.
The card game world and the attitude towards it is a lot different than when I was a kid. No longer something that's done in a dark corner. Card games really do bring people together of all sorts of different walks of life. Doesn't matter, everything else goes out the window.
I hit it in expecting to have a new hobby, but it ended up being much more than that. Like, it has been a lifestyle.
I never really saw myself necessarily being here. It's something that I had wanted to do, but I wasn't sure I was gonna get the opportunity to. Kind of be in on more or less the ground floor.
Flesh and Blood is probably the biggest thing in my life right now. As great as the game is, it would not be as fun to pursue and put so much time into if it didn't have the incredible community that it does. Meeting the players from around the world, from different continents, it's like a really special thing.
People are pumped up, man. People are pumped up.
All of these players are looking to become the world champion of Flesh and Blood.
It means everything to us, to everybody here.
Finally, it's like we're showing it off on like the big stage.
It's very exciting to just be in a room with that many other people who've had the same energy about the game, just like excited to play it.
We're playing for a lot of glory and just a lot of pride as well. You know, what country is going to take home that world championship here today?
It's more than just the game. The goal has always been to create a global reaching community and culture.
Odds were always against this game succeeding. It wasn't created by a corporate entity, and it wasn't based on an existing property. It wasn't cashing in on a trend. It was just created by a guy.
The whole David versus Goliath story has always been compelling to me. Goliath can always be outmaneuvered if you're nimble and agile and you got something special. There is a seat at the table for you, and you are all welcome.